Hello there. Welcome to the Dope Bad Batch episode 5 recap and review with Reflect Media. My name is Catherine Damish, your newly minted Bad Batch host. What? Here with Maui Jones. How you doing, Maui, on this fine Friday evening before our long weekend?
It's rainy and cold, and I don't like it.
I don't like it either. I was showing Maui before we got on live today. I got my sparkling wine here, so it's a party already.
I should have wine, but I don't really drink, so I have
That's
no
okay.
wine.
There's sparkling grape juice. There's other fun things. Some mocktails.
I think I have some Martinellis, actually, now that you mention it.
Nice. I can wait. No.
No. I'm good.
No. Let's get into it. So Bad Batch episode 5.
Yes.
It feels
Rampage.
weird that we're already at this point. Yes, Rampage, a very appropriate episode title here.
Do we know how many episodes this season's going to be, or no?
It's one of those things that I should know, but I don't. I think we're going to go into August, I believe. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, you were going to ask a question. What were you going to say?
I was about to get it started. What was your overall impression of this episode?
I really liked this episode. I had a blast with this episode. It gave me a lot of what I've been asking for in the previous episodes, where I felt like I was getting much more characterization on the other Batchers outside of Hunter. I felt like I got a lot of Wrecker in this episode. If you are a fan of like OG Star Wars, there's a lot of really great Easter eggs in here and callbacks to characters from like OG Star Wars, like original trilogy, which made me really happy. And the pacing was fantastic. I thought this was a kick-ass episode.
Yeah, I agree with you with the pacing. We went from one place to another, really fluidly. And I really liked seeing the Bad Batch all together, working together for the first time, maybe even since the first episode, I would say. Because, in the past couple episodes, you've gotten, Wrecker and Tech, and you've got Hunter and Omega, and you've got Hunter and Echo, but you haven't really gotten all 5 of them so much in quite a while. So it felt really, really good to see just even the 4 of them, all suited up together was a nice little moment for me.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. It looked like Omega got herself a level up partway through this, which
is we'll get there.
Very very Mandalorian to me, which made me very happy.
Very Mandalorian. So when we start, we almost immediately see Wrecker and his good friend the Gronk droid. How hard do you think we should protect this Gronk droid with our lives?
Pretty hard. I love that, but the Gronk droid is pretty much there to serve as weights for Wrecker, which is hilarious. It doesn't seem to serve any other purpose except for squat lifts.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't bicep curling the Gronk droid earlier, and now he's squatting the Gronk droid.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Yeah,
I love it.
But also in that scene, Echo gets Omega gets a comm unit that used to be Crosshair.
Yes, so cute. Another little Omega being a kid moment when they're all trying to make a decision, and Omega behind them is all he's right. That made me laugh.
Yeah, I really liked that gag. I thought that they used that to good effect. I think they did it they stuck to the rule of 3. She did it once. She did it a second time. She did it a third time. Thought it was hysterical.
So when we have our heroes, they are headed to the planet Ord Mantell. Maui, do you recognize the name Ord Mantell?
I recognize the name, but I am so fried from working on getting my book Kickstarter done. I was I know that I know this name, but I couldn't place the exact placement within the universe. But I know you're about to school me.
I have decided to name this segment Deep Cut Cat, if you will permit me. So we are ready for another segment of Deep Cut Cat, because I too recognize the name Ord Mantell, and I immediately remembered it from The Empire Strikes Back, when Han is about to leave the base on Hoth and Leia is trying to convince him to stay. And Han give this like offhand comment like, well, the bounty hunter ran into it or Mantell changed my mind. So it makes sense that we are, running into bounty hunter culture and they're kind of becoming bounty hunters on this planet. And when I looked up Ord Mantell on Wikipedia after confirming my suspicions, I looked it up, and Ord Mantell City, which I would guess would be the capital city and where they ended up landing, is the base for the crime syndicate, the Black Sun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm writing it down.
Do it.
Cool.
And it's yet another example of them tying together all this deep lore. It's one of those shows where, of course, you'll appreciate it if you're a casual Star Wars fan, even if you're someone who, has watched the movies dozens of times. But if you are into that lore, there is stuff there for you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty cool how they weave in all of the references. I feel like Filoni does a good job of weaving in references in a way that doesn't make the world feel smaller. It just makes the world feel interconnected, which I appreciate. So
you're jumping on a question that I have for you later. So we'll get to that idea.
Okay.
Is the world a little too small? So we get to Ord Mantell and we're looking for the informant called Sid, who was apparently an informant for the Jedi, which makes sense that the Jedi would have, a mole on this den of sin, might give them some insight as to what the bad guys are up to. But when we do find Sid, I was watching next to my husband and he immediately was like, who is that voice? Who is this person? He looked it up on IMDb, and Sid is played by Rhea Perlman.
That was Rhea Perlman?
Yes, it was. I know. I had no idea. So now you got to go back and rewatch it with that in mind.
That's awesome for you Cheers fans out there. That's Carla on Cheers.
Yeah, and the mom and Matilda.
Right? Carla, right? Carla's the name on Cheers, right?
I think that sounds familiar. That sounds right.
I'm running on a little sleep here. I believe her name was Carla on Cheers.
Well, if we have anybody watching and they're willing to fact check us in the comments like we had yesterday, please fact check us. We invite it because we are
Carla
only human.
Tortelli, I believe, is her name on Cheers.
Okay.
I'm a pretty big Cheers fan, so I'd be upset with myself if I got that wrong. That's awesome. I did not recognize the name. That makes me happy that he pulled that.
Yeah. Because for anybody who knows my husband, he is like an encyclopedia when it comes to knowledge of actors and knowing the other things that they were in and things like that. So that made me really happy to know that. And then I think we got a little bit of more evidence that maybe they're moving the direction that Omega is Force sensitive because, she immediately identified Sid. It's like, well, this is Sid. Like, you're looking for that. That's Sid.
Right, because she lies to them, and then like they're like, "Oh, guess Sid's not here."
Yeah,
and she just looked at her and like, "You're Sid."
Yeah,
which is
and it wasn't
really
even like
weird.
And it wasn't even like a street smarts thing because, as we know, Omega is probably the least street smart person we've ever encountered. But it was, a feeling, which we are aware in canon that if you are not trained in the Force, but you are Force sensitive, you kind of experience it as like a feeling. So that's
interesting.
Another notch in that column, which I know I mentioned before. I really hope that's not where they're going, but it seems more and more like maybe that is where they're going.
Right. Well, hopefully she's like Force sensitive, but they're not going to make her like a Jedi. Like, don't give her a lightsaber. Have her like, if you're going to have her use the Force, have her use the Force differently. Yeah. Have her use the Force like the freaking Bendu or something, but like don't make her just like a straight up Jedi. Right. Because then we basically get Mandalorian 2.0, where if she is a Jedi or if she is Force sensitive and she needs to be trained, she has to be handed off to somebody who can train her. And then we just basically get Mandalorian season 2 all over again. Right. But once again, right, parent-child relationship, some sort of inner power, that has to, lone wolf and cub type expedition series going from place to place, doing fetch quests. Like Filoni seems to have a certain style, certain tropes. Yeah, but I feel like there's a difference between having a certain style and relying on certain tropes
and like going beat for beat like another story. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think I'm hoping that it doesn't end up like that. It feels like it's going to,
It
and maybe
feels
because
like
we're
it
so
is.
used to that. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if you're just a casual fan who's watching this, if that even kind of registers. Like, I know you and I were like, we're doing the show and we're looking at things kind of critically, but I'm curious to see if other people have thought the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't. I actually have not looked uh at too many reviews of Bad Batch yet because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to like get biased ahead of time when we're doing reviews and stuff. So I haven't like I usually look up reviews and watch like other reaction recaps right away. But since we're reviewing this, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that this time because I
Right.
don't want to
Yeah.
get tainted by their things.
Yeah. The only time I have is when we had a little bit of a break between episodes 2 and 3. Because then I was like,
Yeah.
I have to be part of this conversation. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you, Eric, for that fact check. It was indeed Carla. That's awesome. So we go into Sid's place. I don't know if it's a
Mm-hmm.
shop or anything. We go into Sid's place and we get some cute little character moments, almost right away. Echo almost touches an artifact and Echo stops her. When Sid says that Omega's clearly the brains of the bunch, Wrecker gives her a high five in the background. I mean, they're still kind of slipping in these cute little, character development, relationship developing moments. Did you have a favorite character developing moment that stood out to you?
It was probably the high five between Wrecker and Omega. Like I really do love that relationship. He
I
seems
do
to be
too.
like the really supportive older brother
Mm-hmm.
dynamic with her, and I really, really fucking love that. And then also just like the negotiation with Sid, I thought was particularly well done. So I really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed that too. But Wrecker and Omega definitely was like, tops for me.
Yes. Yeah. And I love I love people who are opposites because you get Wrecker, who is enormous and like got 5 brain cells to fire between them. And you got Omega, who is so small and so curious and so, so willing to do, whatever is asked of her. I just think that's just precious. I love
Mm-hmm.
it very much. Me
Yeah.
and meanwhile, we got Tech over here, who's still a sociopath. I have in my notes because
The worst. Tech
no,
is the worst.
still the
I
worst.
love him, but he's the worst.
We have that scene when they're on the ship where they're talking, Echo is like kind of giving Omega this teachable moment about like what slavery is and that it's wrong but we're gonna go help them. And Tech's like, yeah, and we're gonna get a lot of money out of it. I'm like, Tech, that's not what this is about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That dude is a total sociopath.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But even though Tech is the one that is the alleged sociopath, did you notice the moment where Wrecker is still kind of holding his head?
I
Wrecker's head
did.
still hurts.
And I am worried that you might was it you that was saying like that might be foreshadowing to like him like
I don't
dying, or was
remember.
was someone that was watching? I can't remember, but like I'm concerned now that either there's something wrong with the inhibitor chip in his brain, um or there's something wrong because they're the Bad Batch, right? Maybe like they weren't cooked quite right, and
Mm.
maybe they have a much shorter lifespan. So maybe the reason we don't see them further in is because they have a pretty short lifespan.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit because I think maybe what the show is trying to do is I feel like Tech is the only one who hasn't had like an emotional moment with other characters, whether it's Omega or not. He is the one that's kind of aloof, and I wonder if they're trying to pull one over on us that maybe Tech is the one that's going to peel off from the group next. When really, what this hint that they're giving with Wrecker and him always holding his head and having a headache is another hint that maybe it's going to be Wrecker.
That could be. That could be like maybe the chip is trying to take over.
Right.
trying to get him to like, submit to the programming. That could be what those headaches are for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that could be interesting, and I would like that better than them, being fated to die really quickly. That could be interesting. But I don't know. Like, I don't know that I have enough information yet, but it's something that I really want to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
it's obvious that they're putting these crumbs there on purpose. Let's not kid ourselves.
This is the one where it's like, okay, there's definitely something they're trying to hint at, something that they are foreshadowing, and I'm really freaked out about what that could be.
Right, because once might be incidental, because in that was episode 3 where they had the crash landing on the moon, and so maybe it was a lingering effect from that. Here, it's absolutely on purpose, because there was, to my knowledge, I mean, I've only watched the episode once, but to my knowledge, there was no lead up that was happening.
No, zero lead up. You just all of a sudden,
it was yet, no crash. He was just out of the blue, like groaning.
It was right when they got back on the ship, and they're sitting there, and he's like, and then Hunter's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's nothing."
Yeah.
And I want Hunter to be like, "It's clearly not nothing. What's going on with you? Like, do something about it." Like, yeah, that's really freaking me out.
It is freaking me out. And again, as I said last time, if something happens to Wrecker, I am suing. I am suing for emotional damages because I will not handle that well, personally.
Same. Because he's definitely like, so before I was into like the alpha hero character, I was into the party guy character. Like when I was a little kid, my favorite turtle was Michelangelo, and he's Michelangelo. So like he's definitely like climbing the ranks of like who I like the most on the show.
Is Hunter still on top for you?
Hunter's still on top for me right now, but like it might get dethroned in another episode. If there's another like Wrecker Omega moment like there was in this episode, then like Wrecker's probably gonna like reach the summit instead of Hunter for me.
I feel like once this is over, assuming that nothing too terrible happens to Wrecker, figures definitely crossed. I feel like we would need like little shorts between like Omega and Wrecker. I think that'd be precious.
Yeah, for sure.
I would live for a little series of shorts between Omega and Wrecker. But anyhow, we get to Sid's place, and we are given a side quest a la The Mandalorian. I know you've already identified that, Filoni, again, has these tropes and has these way of telling stories, but this is like exactly the structure of Mandalorian. We get these. I think I called it on Twitter at one point, The Mandalorian. I think I called it Side Quest the show. Yeah, because that's essentially what it is. But like with each little side quest, you get a little like nugget of the main story to kind of keep you going. Whereas in the previous episode, it was mostly the main story. You had the introduction of Fennec, and you had more scenes of the Empire taking over the galaxy and what that means for all these worlds. This was a straight up Mandalorian episode, just with another name. Does that bother you at all?
Oh man, that's a really good question, actually. Yes and no. I mean, I think part of it is that in this type of world, this is a space western, right? This is a space opera and a space western, and it kind of makes sense for the world, right? We're a bunch of outlaw drifters going from planet to planet instead of town to town, and fixing problems in each town and then moving on, right? Like that's just very quintessential, Western storytelling is very fetch questy, by nature. So like I don't, it doesn't bug me too much, but it's so close to what we just saw in 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, and especially this episode felt so similar to the story structure of an episode of Mandalorian. It's just like, okay.
I mean, switch out the characters and it could just be the same thing.
It could literally be the same thing, right? And it's just like, even down to the fact that like Fennec Shand is, the person that they're trying to get information on. It's like, oh, I'll give you information if you go on this fetch quest, like it's just
absolutely.
Like, okay, I get it. Yeah.
It
happens a lot it seems like in this new era of Star Wars. It's almost exclusively the only stories we've gotten are fetch quest stories between the 2 seasons of Mandalorian and what we've seen so far on the Bad Batch. We're just getting a lot of that.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's just a lingering ramification of The Last Jedi, because we have The Last Jedi and they try to take, regardless of whether you think they did it well or not. I know everybody has their own take on that, and I respect that. Regardless of whether you think that went well or not, it was a case of them trying to take Star Wars in a direction that hadn't been taken before, and it went poorly with a lot of people. And I wonder if this is a case of them just being a little bit too safe, like going with what they know works with this universe and with this fan base, to the point where, yes, we know what we recognize Star Wars when we see it and we like the product. That's why we keep coming back. But maybe it's starting to get a little samey.
Yeah, I think Disney's biggest issue, and like JJ actually just spoke more openly about what he referred to as a lack of planning, which I actually think was not true. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, actually, like, strongly disagreed with that, because they did have a plan. The plan was that they had these 3 movies that were going to be done by different artists.
Mm-hmm.
Right. With JJ for the first one, Ryan Johnson for the second one, Trevorrow for the third.
Right.
And they got cold feet because there was a divisive reaction. Now, half of the people didn't like Last Jedi. Half of people loved Last Jedi. I'm in the camp of people that love Last Jedi.
Oh, really?
It challenges the world. It pushes it to places that it had never been before. It does a lot to shake up the status quo of Star Wars. And if you read Trevorrow's Duel of the Fates script, which we actually read for the movies, it makes that trilogy make so much more sense. Right. It's a wonderful resolution of both what happens in Force Awakens and what happens in Last Jedi, and it would have stuck the landing and would have opened up the world, I think, in a really beautiful way. And so Filoni being such a fan of the prequel trilogy, I think, he's going to keep mining like the prequel stuff and like now the Mandalorian stuff that they're creating.
Right.
But I am looking for stories that are going to kind of take us further away from like the Skywalker saga, because even though like there's no talk of Skywalkers in Bad Batch, and there wasn't much talk of Skywalkers until spoilers, end of season 2 of Mandalorian, I still feel like we're just standing in the shadow of it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to the day where we can, like, I would love if they started hinting on stuff on Bad Batch, not about Skywalker saga stuff, but High Republic era stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because now we have like some amazing stories being built. I'm actually getting ready to start reading the first 2, because the second novel just came out. So the first wave had 3 different like reading levels. I'm going to read the adult novels for the High Republic. The first and second ones are supposed to be absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And really start to get into those, because besides, I think, the inclusion of Yoda, because of course they couldn't just like let it be completely divorced. It's all new characters and has nothing to do with the Skywalkers.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's what I'm looking for, and that's what I'm hoping to get more of in this. But we're so firmly in the middle of a Skywalker era that I doubt that they're going to be able to get out of that.
Yeah. And it's not just timeline. I mean, we have very thoroughly mined, especially the points between episode 3 and Return of the Jedi. Like, a lot of things have been done in that era. I was recently watching a video essay, not about Bad Batch. I wasn't cheating. But it was about the direction that Star Wars is being taken nowadays. And if I can just paraphrase what this creator said, because I really kind of agree. If you look at what the MCU is doing, and it has done, you have the genre of superhero movies, right? But they've taken them in different directions thematically. So you have like a Thor Ragnarok, which is a straight up buddy comedy. Let's call it what it is. And you have Infinity War, which is like a Greek tragedy almost. You have your heroes, but it does not go their way, and it's unapologetic about it. And you have, things coming up in the future that, look have gone in different, more creative directions even than that. It's still that superhero movie. You still kind of know what you're getting into, but the tone and the subgenre are so different. And that is not something we've gotten in Star Wars. Star Wars is Star Wars. It's still kind of that action adventure. It's got a little humor sprinkled in there. It's got some mysticism with the Force. That's really about it. And I remember when, before they finished the sequel trilogy, when Rogue One came out and Solo came out, and The Mandalorian was coming up, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. We're starting to kind of get that. Rogue One is like a heist movie in space, and Solo was no, I'm sorry. No, so Rogue One was like the spy thriller in space, and Solo was the heist movie in space. And you got Mandalorian, which is like more Western than like we've ever gotten in Star Wars, even though people still kind of call it a space Western. But even then, like, you haven't deviated from the formula that much. And now that we're in the post Last Jedi world, I mean, they're deviated from it even less.
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine like a new series that kind of gives you a completely different flavor. Like, what if they did like a Masters of the Terras Kasi show that's much more, kung fu, like wushu, because that's like a hand-to-hand combat that was specifically made to fight Jedi and Force users, right? So imagine like something like that, right? So you're still in the Star Wars universe, you still have all those trappings, but we're rooted in like a more like kung fu type of genre, or
the Masters of the Wills, like we had with Chirrut in Rogue One,
or you more high fantasy in Star Wars,
or cover the war between the Jedi and the Mandalorians. I mean, that would be another way to like put the Jedi in this like moral gray area, but still kind of keep it rooted in realism with the Mandalorians and how they learn to combat those Force powers. I mean, there's some great stuff there that we haven't really touched on, at least in Star Wars visual media. I mean, I am not as versed as I should be in the novels or the comics or anything. But let's be honest, like, even if they did have it in a novel or in a comic, that's still going to reach a far smaller subsection of the Star Wars fandom than it would be if it was in a movie or a TV show.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't count, but it counts for a little bit less.
Right. I mean, ultimately, it's the movies that are going to be, they're always going to have like canon priority.
Right.
Right. We've seen that time and time again, right?
Absolutely.
Books are like, oh, these books are no longer canon. Right. These video games are no longer canon. This is no longer canon. The only thing that's ever going to truly be considered canon are the movies. Everything else is subject to change if they so decide.
Well, even the TV show. I mean, the way that Deba Balaba, Kanan's master, dies, that was in a comic already before episode 1 of Bad Batch, and it was different. But it was different, exactly. They retconned it for the purpose of the TV show.
Yep.
So, like you just said, the visual media, the TV show, and the movies are going to take preference.
Yep. Yeah, I think there's a hierarchy. Like books will get superseded by TV. TV will get superseded by movie.
Yes. So. Yeah. There's a hierarchy there. That's a great way of putting it. So anyway, moving on to the Bad Batch. I know we got a little carried away there, but I really appreciate the discussion. So then they go and they try to free Muchi from the slavers. I thought having the slavers there was a really cool throwback to the Clone Wars, because that was a really solid Clone Wars arc when they went to that planet and tried to overthrow those folks. I really like that one. But then they find out that Muchi is not the little kid that they thought they were going to be freeing. It's the Rancor.
Yeah, an adolescent Rancor, and they don't explicitly say it, because why would they explicitly say it in that way? But like, that's clearly the Rancor from Return of the Jedi, right?
Yes, it is.
Right, because it's like Bib Fortuna's trying to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
So hyped to talk about this scene.
No, I love the scene. No, and then you have Tech, who is, pulling up the file on rancors, and he's like, oh yeah, you have to basically like dominate this rancor in order to be considered the alpha, and then it'll comply. And so Wrecker goes and does Wrecker things and subdues the rancor.
Fights the rancor, and like I love that the fight went from them like jumping all over the place and beating the crap out of each other to them just like standing in place and just
like watching. Honestly.
but like Wrecker and the Wrecker were just so tired at the end. They were just barely tapping each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Until one of them just kind of fell over. It was super cute. Oh my god.
Yeah. And again, the other four are just watching, just like, there's not really nothing much we can do here.
Yeah,
we'll
just
gonna
wait
chill
until he subdues them. Yeah, right, exactly. It was really funny.
We can't help, or else we're probably going to screw up this whole arrangement between the two of you. So the two of you are just going to work it out. It's fine. But before that, the Rancor was fighting the Brezek monster, the winged reptilian creature.
Yeah, that thing was awesome.
I was getting super Godzilla versus Kong vibes in that fight, especially when the Rancor, there was a sniper at the top of that tower, and the Rancor basically starts to like push on the tower, try to climb the tower. I'm like, oh, this is a King Kong moment here. This is like King Kong, the Empire State Building. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but I thought that was a really cool throwback to the monster era of film.
Yeah, no, I love this scene. Like, this is part of why I said, like, I really love this episode. It was so much fun. Eric said, I didn't like that part. The Rancor being Jabba's Rancor from the movie seemed unnecessary and sad. We've seen Muchi die.
Okay, yeah. I put in my notes, like, kind of makes me sad for Muchi's eventual demise.
Yeah.
And I thought
this goes back again to that question of, like, are they expanding the world, making it interconnected, or are they making it smaller? I guess I could see this making the world a bit smaller because Muchi is specifically Jabba's Rancor from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, here is my take on it. I really appreciate cameos and characters from OT and movie media coming into these stories. ... As long as it means something. And I feel like this is... I've appreciated most of these appearances. I really liked Fennec being in it. I cried like a baby when Luke appeared at the end of Mandalorian. I know some people didn't like it. I loved it. But here is one instance where I was like, was this really necessary? This is one I did not really find valuable.
Yeah, it didn't rub me the wrong way. Like, Luke did, actually.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, it was a really great moment, but the more I thought about it, I was just like, huh. But the Rancor, like, I thought the Rancor was like kind of fun.
Okay, that's interesting.
Kind of fun, yeah.
And that's interesting considering our perspectives. You said you were a pro Last Jedi person, so you liked. I'm assuming you liked their representation of Luke as being like jaded and like an old man, and not like the Luke that we used to know. Whereas I don't hate the Last Jedi as much as a lot of people seem to, but I'm not a fan. And so me getting the redeemed version of Luke in the end of The Mandalorian, like, that's the hero that I recognize. Nothing but respect for my Luke Skywalker. So here's the thing. To see like how we differ on that point.
And I know we just like went on a tangent a little bit ago about like the expanded universe and whatnot, but here's just a real quick defense of Luke in the Last Jedi.
Go.
If you look at the prequel trilogy of who the Jedi were, they kind of sucked. Right?
Okay.
And they sucked for a long time.
Go off, King.
Right? They sucked for a long time. Like, they were establishment. They sucked. I'm a hippie, left wing person. So the Jedi suck. And I think that Anakin did exactly what he needed to do. When they said Anakin needed to bring balance to the Force, having a billion Jedi and like one Sith is not very balanced, is it?
Right.
What did he do by the end of that? He made it so that there are barely any Jedi and barely any Sith. Right. So I think he did exactly what the prophecy said, to bring balance to the Force. And the end result for me should have been not just restarting the eternal struggle of the Jedi and the Sith and the light and the dark, but a realization that both are needed. That the passion and emotion of the Sith is just as important as the order and virtue of the Jedi. And in fact, what we need to, if we want to balance, we have to realize that we are comprised of both of those things. We have to find out how to coexist in that space and find our place in the tension of those two things. And that is something that I felt like was being way better represented in Duel of the Fates, right? So so that's my defense of like Luke, is he is digging into the history of the Jedi, realizing that they suck just as much as the Sith. They're right, that they're, their need to try and keep order and keep disconnected and not love and live life in a full way is just as oppressive as the Sith with their lunacy. Like they are both kind of doing similar things in a way.
I would push back on just as oppressive, but still not great, I would say.
Well, I guess it's oppressive, oppressing yourself versus oppressing those around you.
Okay.
Perhaps, though, like the Emperor didn't seem to be particularly good at being a Sith, in my opinion. I have a lot of hot takes about like how Sith and Jedi were meant to be represented versus how they were represented in the movies, and where they kind of like dropped the ball, narratively speaking, on the characterization of Sith versus Jedi. So
this is all the more reason why you and I need to go through all the Star Wars films and just have at it.
Yes, 100%. So sorry to digress,
no.
but
Yeah,
that's my defense of The Last Jedi. If you look through it through the lens of like the Jedi were ineffectual and not very good for a long time, and as Luke is digging into the history of the Jedi and realizing how flawed it is, and that this is a system that doesn't need to be maintained, right? Then I think that it completely makes sense where he is. It's right. It's like if he were a Republican who believed like that, that white supremacy wasn't an actual thing, whatnot, and then like suddenly when he really digged in to the history, realized that it actually was, and realized that everything he was upholding was actually hurting people too. What would that do to you when your belief system is completely destroyed?
Right.
And he's still a good man, but like he realizes the best thing I can do is relinquish my power and not use my power, because that's just perpetuating the thing. I don't want to keep contributing to the largesse of the Skywalker name, because it is the symbol of white supremacy in this galaxy. So sorry to get a little social justice warrior on y'all.
No, it's fine.
My hot take on that.
Yeah, and believe me, I would love to sometime get into that discussion of like what the prophecy really meant and how it turned out in the Skywalker trilogy, in the Skywalker saga. But we're talking about Bad Batch right now, ladies and gentlemen. No, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. But I want to go back to the whole, is the universe too small question. So when you say you didn't mind the Bib Fortuna cameo and the Rancor being obviously Jabba the Hutt's Rancor, or maybe a predecessor of the Rancor that was Jabba the Hutt's Rancor, does that mean it doesn't bother you, like it's benign, or you actually saw value in that? If that makes sense.
It's not necessarily that I saw value, like this needed to be explained. I just thought it was like a fun aside that just like made it feel like interconnected. I think that like if you look at it stacked up with all of the other connections, it feels like a bridge too far. But this alone, I thought was just like funny. I was like, oh, that's the Rancor from Jedi. That's hilarious that they're saving that Rancor that eventually Luke's gonna, murder.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think if it had just been by itself, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute, like a little aside, a little nod to the OT. But because we've gotten Tarkin and Saw Gerrera, and we've gotten Fennec, and we've got all these things kind of all together, it might be a little much, especially when, again, it doesn't have really anything to do with the A plot. Not really. Well, then we get kind of a bit of a cliffhanger moment, I would say, at the end. Sid knows who Fennec is, not necessarily why she's after them, and kind of hints at the Bad Batch maybe there are going to be a bounty hunting squad. But then Sid kind of gives this cryptic, oh, don't worry, I'm good with secrets, wink, wink. And the last shot we get is Hunter kind of glaring at her. I don't think he buys it. And I wonder with that glare if that we as the audience are not meant to buy it either.
Yeah, I know, like that was a weird exchange at the end, and I was confused on what that meant.
Right.
I was like, does that mean she's going to start blackmailing them to keep their secret, and they're going to have to like run jobs for her, and they're going to be kind of like pulled into like the bounty hunting fetch quest the profession? I don't know.
Yeah, and I can kind of see this going either way vis-a-vis Sid, where on the one hand, Sid was an informant for the Jedi, the good guys, although we just kind of went a whole rant why that's not true. But for this purpose, we'll call them the good guys, the light side. But Sid is also on Ord Mantell. It is a hotbed of crime. I think Sid might be the kind of character that looks out for themselves and does whatever is necessary to keep themselves on top. And maybe that is enough reason to sell them out to the highest bidder. And they know that Fennec is already looking for them, so it would be really easy. Just be like, hey, they're right here. Hello, yeah, right here. I can keep them busy while you come and pick them up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I would agree with that for sure.
Yeah, so this could easily go either way. And maybe that little glare was a bit of a psych where we'll have a trustworthy moment with Sid later, but not for sure. I certainly don't trust Sid. If it benefits her, she'd probably give away their secret. 100%. Yeah, like we just said.
Yeah.
And knowledge is currency, whether it's this galaxy or elsewhere.
And when it comes to like the scum and villainy like corner of the Star Wars, universe, you can trust people until you can't.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like I even think that like what's her name? The mechanic in Mandalorian, like she's played by Amy Sedaris.
Yeah, I know exactly. I know who you're talking about. I don't remember the character's name. I know exactly who you mean.
With the beautiful 70s fro. Like I think that she would
She's so great.
given enough credits, like she would totally sell out Mando.
You think
like,
so?
Even though she loves that bit, yeah, I think she would totally sell him out.
I didn't get that vibe at all.
I don't trust anyone that's in the scum and villainy corner of the Star Wars universe. Right. Like I trust, like I said, I trust them until I can't.
Right.
Because it's like, because here's the thing: if someone comes to her and like they know that she knows something, and she knows that they know that she knows something, she knows that if she doesn't take the bribe, they'll probably just torture her, get the information, and then kill her. So she might as well just sell him out and get the money and move on, right? So like, I don't trust anybody in the scum and villainy like part of that universe.
But Maui, she was such a good babysitter.
Yeah, she was. And she would feel bad about it, but she would do it. Like Han's the same way. Like Han is trustworthy until you can't trust him, right? Like if he has to make that call, he's going to make that call.
Fine.
At least
coming from, but I don't like it.
At least at first with Han. I think Han does change over time, right?
Yeah.
And becomes more trustworthy until he's not again. As we see, he goes back to his scoundrel ways. And scoundrels are a little bit different than scum and villainy. Scoundrels have a little bit more of a moral compass and will do messed up stuff, but only to an extent. So it's interesting to explore the gray areas of Star Wars. And I'm actually hoping the Bad Batch gets further into that as we see these these clones trying to strike out on their own. I hope we get to see them have to make some tough decisions and really reconcile with what they always knew in terms of, being all about the old republic, the older republic versus like this new world, this galactic empire, and what is their place in it? What is their place in this new world? Because as far as we know from the textual evidence that we have, they don't exist by the time we get to A New Hope. So they don't have much time, right? They have 20 years, maybe?
Yeah, 18, 20 years, something like
18,
that.
20 years to survive.
3 and 4.
Before they find their happy ending and go to a quiet planet and live out their days, or they go out in the blaze of glory.
With their growth acceleration, they don't have much time at all.
Right.
I don't like that. I don't like that idea.
So who knows?
Yeah. So what would you give a rating to episode 5 out of 5 stars?
I think I would give this a 4.2 4.2. I like this a little bit more than the previous episode, which I gave a 4. I think I gave
it a 3
for one episode. I gave 3 for one episode and 4 for another.
4 for the other one. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So this one I liked a little bit more than the last one. So I would say 4.2. And Wrecker is my MVP for this episode.
Yes, MVP. I would give this episode a 3.5 out of 5 because it was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun little ride, but you didn't get as much and yeah, you did get some character moments and some relationship moments as we spoke of earlier. It didn't really advance the story very much. You know, you got this little side quest and we found the name of Fennec, although the fans already knew her name. And that's really about it.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think it's fair. Yeah. It's kind of it's always annoying when you're like backfilling and getting the name is like a big reveal to them, but it means absolute fuck all to us. We're like, yeah, so I already knew that, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Great. Thanks. If we had gotten the name of who had hired her, I would probably up that score a little bit because at least we'd advance the plot even that much, but we didn't even get that. I mean, the only reason why it's not lower is that it was really fun. It was a really fun episode.
It's a very fun episode. Yeah, for sure. Cool. That was fun.
Yeah. I think we kind of covered it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, way to host.
Else? Thank you. You think you got anything else to add before we get out of here?
Check out my Kickstarter for my book. Hi, I'm Ella. It is coming out in July, and it is awesome. If you have any kiddos, it's a real fun time. We talk about we introduce you to the characters, but we also talk about accessibility and pronoun usage and Black joy and empathy. It's going to be really great, and it's an introduction to this entire world that I've created for children to be supported in a supportive, racially diverse environment. So yeah, I highly recommend checking it out.
And if you're in the Chicagoland area, where do they go tomorrow for the fundraiser at the pizza place?
Our final little pop-up fundraiser event is at Puree's Pizza in Oak Park. It's right across the street from the Lake Theater, the very famous Lake Theater. So be sure to check that out. We'll have coloring sheets there of Nina and Miles, which are her stuffed animals, as well as Ella herself and Fatima and Mars. So we have the most coloring sheet characters we've had at one of these pop-ups. There'll also be a little photo booth, and there's a $5 pizza combo. 50% of any of those combos are going towards the Everyday with Ella dream. So yeah, we would very much appreciate it if you came out and support it.
I will be there. I can't wait. I'll probably fill out a coloring sheet.
Yeah, I'm going to post the link in the chat if anybody feels like giving.
Yes. All right. Well, that about does it for us. I'm Catherine. That's Maui. This has been Bad Batch Episode 5, and we will see you next time.
You got to point the opposite way. You'll get used to it.
I know, I'm not used to it yet. There we go.
Like, that's Catherine. You're like,
I don't know. I have no spatial awareness to begin with. So
it's so weird. Bye, everybody.
Bye.